Hello, hello. All right. So, here we go, guys. I'm going to be doing a interview with my dear friend Steph, and she's just joining right now. All right. So, today's topic, I think that might be okay. Hi, Steph.
Hi.
It sounds great. I'm so glad we got that little audio bug fixed. All
Perfect.
right. So I want to introduce my beautiful friend, Steph, intuitive medium and incredible healer and teacher. And today's theme, how very appropriate in Scorpio season, is death and rebirth.
Big one.
It is a big one. Welcome.
Thank you
Um,
for having me.
Absolutely. So, I'd love it if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your business and the many things you do and what is a medium?
Mm. Well, I'm an intuitive medium, which means that I communicate with the unseen. And that sounds like a very broad term,
Mm,
but it's the way I've always been. I was when I was young, I had this ability to kind of know when things weren't real, when people weren't telling the truth, when
mm,
people were limiting their love. Like I could sense the adults around me, like something that they were saying and the way that they were in the world were at odds. So there was this sense within me, this awareness of something else, that there was more to life than what I was seeing.
mm,
And as I've evolved and gotten into mentorship with my own mentor and really developing a meditation practice and getting really clear on who I am as a being, it's given me the insight to see and assist other people with their journey in the unseen, which is the sense of energy. It's like we're all
mm,
energy. So for me, I think about it in terms of energy and helping others to get clear on their own energies and the energies around them, the energies within them, and how these things come together in unseen ways. And we can tap into these fields of awareness to have a much more expansive life experience. So, using the intuition is kind of a broad platform and it's different for everyone. So, as a medium, it's like I'm a guide to help other people with that unique process for themselves, and also to communicate with spirits who have crossed over to unseen realms. So it's my experience that when someone passes on, dies from this life, they don't die. They just, I mean, they have a process of death in this reality, but they have another experience in another plane. There's a transformation that occurs. So my job is to help facilitate communication with that process and with those souls, and to communicate with those that are still here in this reality, and to make that a little bit more fluid and connected.
mm. I love that. What a beautiful gift.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty scary for a long time because I don't think I understood what was happening to me. And I find that with other folks that are highly sensitive or intuitive, it can be a
Mm,
really frightening thing to have these doors open. And so it can be helpful to have guidance around that so that you can understand that you don't need to be afraid, and that you can move through with ease and confidence. And it's about
yes.
getting to know yourself. And the more that you get to know yourself, the more that you can develop these gifts without being in a state of fear.
Mm, I love that. So, um, I love some of the conversations we were having to prep for this interview and like really dial it in what we wanted to talk about. And what I find with my like healers and especially in my like spiritually tuned people is that we're doing the same thing,
Yeah.
And so I think both of our clients come to us in this place where they are experiencing like different fractures in their life and wanting to have this like really strong foundation. And I think what you said about, um, I think essentially like being afraid to know yourself and these parts of your
Hmm.
themself, and I think that really
Hmm.
ties into your strengths were helping someone get into their intuition. And I think that is really scary for a lot of people to like feel into the parts of themselves that they believed were not okay to express and will
Yeah.
be judged and will be prosecuted. It's, I think, especially with women, there is this like fear that like who we are is not acceptable.
Yeah. And, there's a question that's coming to me while you're talking, which is what if everything was us? Like, what if
Mm.
everything we experienced, every part of ourselves was all part of ourselves? Like, what if it's all acceptable? What if it's all part of a greater whole?
Yeah.
And that, as you begin to shift your frame around this and shift your perspective, the fear can really melt away because it's like, oh, that's just me. That's just a part of myself. Like, it becomes less scary when you recognize it as something that's okay. Like, it's okay to
Yeah.
have fear. It's okay to have pain. It's okay to have resistance. It's okay to not know what's coming, to not know what to do, it's all right.
Yeah.
And that's really the process that I
Absolutely.
think that we're helping people with. And I think you're doing it through your means and I'm doing it through mine. But it is this like if we take a pause and we look at some of the ways in which we are with ourselves and in the world, in the
Mm.
kitchen, in relationships. And
Yeah.
I've heard you say this before, it's all the same thing. Like
Yeah.
how you are in traffic is how you are. Like there's no difference between these different spaces. Like it's all you. So you
Yeah.
can start to navigate one space, like being in the kitchen or being looking at your
Mm.
intuition, or you can take a
Yeah.
path, any path, and apply that to everything,
Yeah.
which is an empowering process. It's also a scary process. So it's like there's this
It is.
duality. There's that death and rebirth, right? It's like it's both.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I love, it's like one of my favorite tools. And I try, you and I were talking about this, that like, I'm holding up mirrors and like as coaches and guides, like we're doing that. It's like
Mm-hmm.
we're not controlling the transformation. We're like opening doors and holding up mirrors for the client to walk through and do the work and do it themselves. And, I think there's so much fear in that because I remember this like aha moment like years ago. I was going through this really tumultuous part of my life and I was just like, who is that? Like, I don't even know
Oh.
who that is. And like
Mm-hmm.
watching part of my life and having this like, I don't even know who that person is. And it's like, yeah, because I'm in such denial that like I am
Mm-hmm.
this complex whole person. I'm not just like this like playful, joyful, like lovely person. I'm also like an asshole and I'm also like insecure and like I have these other parts that I'm like I don't want it. And it's like, well, because of that, then I can't even recognize it. And so because I've like cut out parts, which like, you know, I think you and I have both done the like personal discovery work and like the personal growth that allows us to help our clients walk through that because it is uncomfortable. Like our culture does really prey on fear and we
Mm-hmm.
see parts of ourselves that are like not okay. Like I see it a lot with women, especially with nutrition and like body image stuff. Like there's always some part of us that isn't quite right. It's not enough. It's too much. It's not right here. It's not okay here. Like it's just like,
When we get
what if
stuck in
I just,
parts. Sorry.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
no, yeah. So, um, I do want to like dive into fear. I think right now is such a perfect time. You and I were talking a little bit about like seasonally and using astrology as a tool to like think about different parts of the year and how those have different themes. And right now we're coming into the darkest time of the
Mm-hmm.
year. And a lot of people I'm sensing are sort of having this like, oh, I don't want it. And it's like, I know, here we go. Like, hold on. And it's like, yeah, of course it is scary, but it's like to tie into both. It's like the leaves are falling off the trees and like it's no longer, we've gone from summer to the harvest to like this gold, beautiful light, and now it's falling down. and the
Yeah.
energy is all coming down, which is what's happening inside, right? So like we've gone from like the ego, like the Leo of the summer, into like the Scorpio, which is like
Hmm.
the depths, the underworld. And it like it's not underworld as in like demons and like death as in this like terrible scary thing, but like the underworld is just like our subconscious,
Hmm.
really, and like helping
Yeah.
our clients step into that. So what can you say sort of on like
Mm.
tying, I think the metaphor of like the seasons is really helpful for people to understand
Hmm.
how we can move through that natural cycle in ourselves. So,
Yeah.
what would you say to someone on the beginning of the journey who's just getting into like what is introspection,
Well, it's like,
and how can
yeah.
they be guided into this part of
Mm.
what's happening, the death of this time of the year?
Yeah. I think that you hit something on the head when you're talking about it's like the different parts of yourself. What are the parts of yourself that you don't want to look at?
Mm.
Can you welcome them? And just pick one. We all have many. Um, Pick a part of yourself that's coming to the surface, that's making you grit your teeth, that's making you, you know, kind of like want to hide and push away. And just instead of, it's like you're right here and you can kind of feel it coming up. You're like, oh God. And it can be a sense of depression. It can be a sense of unworthiness. It can be a sense of um, feeling disconnected, isolated. There's so many themes around going inward that are
Yes.
associated with fear. And we have this holiday season coming up and it gets all crazy and chaotic and it's celebratory, which is nice, but at the same time, like our bodies and our beings are trying to like go deal with this thing, right? So it's really
Yeah.
hard. It's like we're trying to go out and be like, no, I'm fine. And it's okay to not be fine. So I would say the first step is like welcoming this thing in and just
Mm-hmm.
saying, okay, I don't feel great.
Yeah.
So what? Like, it doesn't mean that we sit and this is where the tricky part comes in. It's like you welcome the thing without letting it destroy you, the good part of yourself that needs to be present,
Right.
without letting
Right.
it. And look, there's a time for that. If you're doing a deep dive and you're going into really deep spiritual work, there is a time for letting yourself be destroyed. But when you're just starting out, don't try to take it all on at once. It's like take the baby step of what's coming up right now and just cradle it. Let it walk with you a little bit more each day. It's like breath work, grounding,
Yeah.
sitting out in nature. I know it's cold, but go bundle up and put your feet in the earth. I take a water bottle outside. It's like what means and measures can you take in real time to take
Mm.
care of this part of yourself? This part of yourself needs witnessing. It needs nourishment. It needs um, tenderness. We're
Yeah.
so hard on it. It's like, no, you get away. I don't like you. Like listen to the way that
Exactly.
we have these communications
Yeah.
inside of our heads. We all do. And so
Yeah.
it's the baby step part of just getting a little bit more comfortable with our discomfort step by step. So it's seeking out guidance, programs, community. Don't do it alone.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Like number one tip of like personal development, like yeah, definitely have your introspection time and like come up, take a breath and like practice that vulnerability with like people who love and support you and like know that like all of these themes are universal. Like you're not
Everybody's
alone.
going through it.
Everyone's got it. Everyone's got it.
And we
So,
were talking about this earlier. The nice thing about astrology, and I'm not an astrologer, but I do, participate,
yeah.
um, is it's happening to all of us. So it's actually a way for us to get centered together. It's a way for us to understand um, a process together. The seasons are a
Yeah.
process. Life is cycles. Like my mentor, Molly Knight Ford, she says that like nothing in nature is a straight line.
Yes.
And if you really wrap your head around that, it's like, why are we trying why are we trying to beat nature? Like, what's the point in that? Why are we trying to get from point A to point B? Like, let yourself be carried down the river. Like, it's
Right.
okay. So it's both. It's that
Yeah.
accepting and, but I do think support is huge. Wait, I mean, look, in this gray blanket in Seattle, we want to dive under the covers. It's really easy to hide. We're always being told we have the Seattle freeze, like it's hard to get to know people here. There is this sense of being like pulled in and hiding, kind of because of the environment. So I think we have to have an extra push here. We really have to force ourselves to get out and to meet people and to connect and to remember that we're not alone.
Totally. It's like I'm not an expert, but my experience in this is, like I moved up to the Northwest from the South like 7 years ago, and I remember my first like winter was like, oh, that's definitely seasonal depression, what I had. And my experience of being here like 7 years has been that like your 4 components to overcome this are like, community. So like our weather forces us to like change our body language, and just like you're bracing the cold, your head's down, that affects your choices. And so it's just like, well, what are you craving? You're craving the sun, which could be warmth through like deep connection. So like find ways to like host a potluck, like have people over, like I made a big pot of soup, come over, like everyone wants it. They just like are afraid to get it, which I've realized over and over. And then like, so community, vitamin D can be helpful, but I do think it's actually like what causes the depression is isolation, which our weather promotes.
Yeah.
So like community, vitamin D, movement, people stop moving. So like a little bit of exercise, like, just like go to the gym, like even just dance around your house, like a little bit of movement, really just like, because we've gone from seasons where we're moving, we're active, we're outdoors, we're talking to people, we're doing it, and then we go into this introspection phase and remember that you need to continue to like reach out and like make an effort of it.
Yeah. And nature,
and
heat and nature. Yeah. You can find places to make fires. You can go to the spa and sweat it out. Like there's ways to work with it so that it isn't this all or nothing thing. I think we do get into this very like apocalyptic feeling around it. Like I have no control. I can't do like everything. And then we start telling ourselves this narrative about our limitations. And it's like, you can make efforts to change things. In fact, when you really want something to change, you have to make a lot of effort. And this as a coach, I've talked to other health coaches and life coaches and people that help people, with weight issues or working out. It's like, you have to build the muscle. So you do have to also, so here's the thing. It's like, yes, we're being easy on ourselves with the tenderness. And it's also like, you have to push yourself. You do have to make an effort to get to where you want to be. And that includes changing your patterns. And that doesn't happen overnight. So there's a reason that when you're really trying to make a shift, you do need to hold on to it for a certain, 3-4 weeks. Like you have to keep doing it on a rhythm to shift the way that your natural system wants to default to.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. So, in like both in your work and mine, like I have people like get clear as like the first step, like get clear on what your why is, like why would you change versus not. So like, like it sounds like part of your work is including these parts that like perhaps don't want to be seen or there's some fear around. And like, of course you do that so well. You have like this beautiful light, rainbow light around you that just like welcomes people in. Brain fart. I lost it. No. I think my question was like, how can we, that's what it was. You were talking about like this absolutes. So it's like, it's either or.
Yeah.
And I see that a lot with like, it's either they're like on point and like they're using the toolkit that I've given them or these new strategies, or they're doing nothing. And it's like, how can we be on the spectrum instead of like yes or no? It's like, can we just like be baby stepping? So like, I think part of that is it's tied to fear, and it's also tied to death of what they have been doing. Even if it's not working for them, they're still afraid to kill it. What would you say to that?
I think you do have to make a commitment. And so, so even though it's not all or nothing, there's a spectrum, but it's like, if you really want change, you do really have to want it. So it depends on what your goal is. If you're trying to develop a meditation practice, you need to do it every day. If you're trying to get a 6-pack, you got to go to the gym every day. Like, what's your goal? And I do think that there's ways to soften the approach in the sense that, but the problem is when we have all these different parts of ourselves at war for attention, if we don't change the pattern fully or in a more full way, one of those voices gets to sneak up in and like take our attention. And then we're kind of back to where we started. And so I do think that there is a way, if you already have a practice and you're trying to recommit or you're trying to up level to a different space, it might be a little bit easier. You can like 4 days a week is working for me, you know, like everyone is different. So I think that's the point here. Everyone has a different need. And so it's about figuring out what your need is. And sometimes it takes somebody else sort of pushing you a little bit into knowing what that is. And oftentimes, because we have so much resistance, we might not know. So I do think it is important to have that guidance and have a community around you that can keep you accountable to what your commitment is. But I think the commitment specifically is different for each person, depending on what level they're at, depending on where they're trying to go. So I think the spectrum for me is more about the individuality of each unique path than it is about, you know, a sort of middle ground. Because I think the middle ground, it just, again, it depends on your goals. I think the middle ground can be dangerous in the sense that like, gosh, we can use it as an out, you know, it's really easy. But I would love to hear your thoughts on this because I feel like you're going to bring something to this conversation that,
I would say like one of my favorite tools is like the inner child work. And like we were saying, connecting to those parts that you're like, oh, I don't want it. Like, you know, so to like, I have my clients kind of like do some archetype work to understand these different parts of themselves. And, you know, it's like, for those of you who are on my newsletter, I did talk a little bit about this, but my point here is that if you can think about these parts of yourself that you don't really care for and that are often ignored as little children, that has been fundamental for me to bring in these parts and heal them through self-love, because I can feel it. I can feel this little child hand slip into mine and be like, I really like, why haven't you been listening to me? And just like this like sadness. And I can like feel it and be like, okay, come here, like climb into my lap, like tell me about it. I'm so sorry, I've abandoned you. And like to have this archetype has been really helpful for me to tap into it and like feel it deeper. But if you think a little bit about like, I can't even deal with you right now, like go to your room, which is how we've been talking to this. It's like, I'm at work, like don't talk to me right now, or whatever it is, you know? And so then how can we like, just as you're like, perhaps your child would be having a crisis and calls you while you're at work, do you just like, I'm at work, like I can't, or do you just like, tell me what's going on and spend 5 minutes with this child and then go back to your day?
I mean, we talk to ourselves in a way that we would never talk to other people in our heads. We all know we do this when we really tap in and listen. And it is really dangerous because it sets us up for this really strained relationship. And where do you think all that tension is coming from? All that fear is coming from? It's because that little person in you, that real person that you grew up with in your heart, is suffering and just craving attention and is usually willing to get it in whatever means possible. So we develop these behavioral patterns and based on reactivity, trying to get our needs met because we're not meeting them for ourselves. So I agree with you. I did some inner child work kind of at the beginning of my journey, and it was really helpful. From definitely in the beginning, it was really helpful because I was able to soften. So I'm really glad you brought that up as a way to soften the approach, to make it more digestible. It's like, you know, it's okay to go in, like we were talking about before, like baby steps. Like you need yourself to see yourself, and you can't do that if you're screaming at each other, you know? I think, you know, one of the fundamental pieces in my practice that I really, the foundation for me is bringing sensation into the body. It's the way that I learned how to really see myself and to make, you know, boundaries between understanding that child better and being able to take care of myself in different ways. Like when I can't feel into my physical system and the intelligence surrounding that physical system, how do I know that I'm even here? You know, it's like I'm off somewhere else in my thinking, or I'm attached to some thought form over here, and I'm just walking around like a crazy person. And that's where all these parts of the self kind of just control us and lead us around these pathways, and we're really not present. And so for me, bringing sensation into the body as a practice daily, as much as possible, and recognizing what's going on. Like, am I aware of my feet? You know, can I feel the chair? Like, am I here? So for me, that was a really helpful way of having that tenderness in terms of checking in and bringing me out of the beating myself up part, you know, where I'm constantly just at war up here going, what is going on? But I love that. I think that there's something about also making this work fun and sparkly and magical. Like, it's okay to enjoy this too. Like there are miracles that happen in self-work. There's like when you get to, I remember when I did an exercise many years ago where I met that inner child, and I'm telling you, that girl looked like the girl from The Ring. Remember that movie? She was like, you know, I mean, that's how far I disassociated from myself, and I had to heal her into a beautiful being. And it's like, you know, we're hard on ourselves.
I love that. I think it's a little bit like almost, you know, it's like, please forgive me if this is an inappropriate reference, but it's sort of like adopting a kid who's been in the foster system for years. And you're just like, I kept you there. I kept you there. You know, and it's just like, they have trust issues. They're kind of beat up. Like, there was some abuse that you did to them that you were just like, go away. Go away. You're unwelcome. I don't want you. You know, and then eventually you start to heal that.
And that is the horror of the situation. That is why we do this in baby steps. That is why it's constructive to make it magical and fun as well, because it is a heavy process, but there's also so much grace and beauty in that deep dive, in that journey. I mean, we get to cradle that grief of what we've done. Like, once we start to recognize this thing that's happened to us, we get to go in and connect with that person, connect and make her feel known and safe. And like, what, I mean, I can't think of anything more beautiful than that, or more, you know, there's just the rewards in it. I mean, your life changes because of that. Totally. So, you know, it's not a bad thing, but it's a lot.
It is a lot. I think that's why, you know, as we've both said, like, community and support and guidance has been crucial for this. Like, I've had my own coaches and healers for years, and I do feel like that's why I'm able to help my clients in such a big way, because I've taken my own personal development seriously. And like, it's very hard to do it alone. Like, I do my own personal work on the daily, and I, like, you know, I'm reaching out to members of my community and like people like Steph who can like help me and who have their own gifts and are connected to different things that help bring in that wisdom, bring in that healing, and offer a different perspective. We're often so blind and not curious to our own patterns. So, you know, I know this is one of the things you and I wanted to talk about, is like, how can we bring curiosity into our personal development? And like, why it sounds like you believe is a foundational tool.
Yeah, I think for me, you have to keep that question. Because look, if we start thinking that we know everything, if we get to a point where we're sure all the time about look, I mean, there is, again, we're going to talk about this duality, but there is a self-knowing that develops with inner work. There's also a constant question that you're carrying so that you can develop more. If you are at the end of your journey, there's no more journey, and you're not at the end of your journey ever. So it's like you always have to, ever. So you always have to maintain this question. And I'll tell you why the question is great, because if the question is there, then that means that more goodness is coming. It has to. It's inevitable. So if you can, and there's the magic, if you can hold that question of like, but what else is coming? Rather than, oh, I know what's
Right.
coming. Like what voice is that I know what's coming? I know that this is going to, it's that's
Right.
not your true self. Your true self exists in the mystery of the unknown, because that's what we
Right.
actually are in. We don't
Right.
have proof. This is like the unseen. That's the great thing about working with the unseen. That's what I tell my clients. It's like, you don't need proof. Just live and love. Like, live and learn and love and embrace this process, because it's magical when you don't know. Like, how
It's true.
empowering it is to just say, like, I don't know. What a wonderful, glorious experience. I surrender to it. Yes, thank you, more please. Like, thank you. This is awesome. I don't know what's happening next, but I surrender all of my, false stuff to it, because, like, I'm not in control. Like, I'm only in control of my reactivity and
Yeah,
my love. Like, that I have
exactly.
control over.
Right. So surrender and also be curious.
Yeah,
Mm.
those two pieces for
I
sure.
as you're talking, I'm just laughing because I remember this time I'm with my son, and he's in his little like play area, which is like, this like colorful little
Mm-hmm.
plastic gate, and there's these puzzle pieces on the ground that are foam.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember laughing so hard because he's like, what's under there, and like starts pulling this like framework up and is like pulling the floor apart to see like what's underneath. And I was like,
Oh,
this is the metaphor
yeah.
of like personal development and like diving into the subconscious. And I'm like, you're just like inherently wise, and just like children are that way. They're like, what's under here?
They get it.
And as adults, it's like, oh, there might be a spider under there. It's like,
Yeah.
is that the worst?
Yeah, we've
Just a
trained
little, just a little
ourselves out
spider?
of it.
Yeah.
We're a cultural process of like ripping away our innocence and our curiosity and our good golden open hearts. Like, we really, children are brilliant to observe, because they have
Yeah.
that still intact, and it's us who take it away from them because of all the systems in place. And that's okay. That's part of our journey too. Like, it's still acceptable in the sense that we all came here to learn, all of
Yeah.
these mysterious life lessons, and it's a beautiful thing. But what a gift to see that.
Yeah. I absolutely like just want to invite you guys, if you have children in your life or friends with children, spend time with the
Mm.
children. Like, they will teach you all the lessons you need to know that you forgot.
Hmm.
They're so
Yeah.
brilliant. The way they look at the world is like wise, and it's simple. And like as adults, we overcomplicate it. And I found I was able to do more inner child work by just spending time with children.
I have
So,
heard that from so many incredibly wise people. That same
yeah.
thing, it really does change you, and it changes your perspective and your outlook. And I do think that, like, that trust, inherent trust that lives
Mm.
in kids, and what you said about forgetting and remembering. And I wanted to make a point around, like, the work that I do is not to get you to understand something you don't understand. It's get to help remind you that you already know it. Like,
Yeah.
it is inner child work. It's like, you already know
Yeah.
this. You knew this when you came here. You've just forgotten. It's
Right.
just a forgetting. We are a species of amnesia, you know. It's like a
Right.
disease of amnesia, that's
That's the process.
yeah.
And you're never there. Like you said, it's a journey
Yeah.
that you never arrive at. So, I'd love to, we've got to wrap this up, but it's such a juicy interview. We could just keep going on about it. I do want to share with people this really special workshop that you have, and I'll be there. I'm so pumped about it. And it's all about sharpening your intuition and getting to connect with parts of yourself, right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about it.
It's going to be a fun workshop. We're going to do intuitive skill building. You're going to figure out what your dominant psychic skill is, because we all have psychic skills. We're all psychic. So it's really about identifying how special you and unique that you are, and then sharing that with, we'll partner up with people. You get to meet new people, and it's a low pressure class. Like, it's not going to be scary, super deep, crazy stuff. It's going to be fun. And we're going to play for a couple hours on Saturday, November 17th at the Creativity Loft in Shoreline. And the space itself just has some really cool energy going on where things get really highlighted, and there's a high vibration there that I'm
Yep.
really excited about. So I think the space also will help facilitate this process, but it's going to be fun. I've got a good group already signed up. There are still a few slots left, but it'll be magical, and you'll get to know some parts of yourself that you probably have forgotten, which is a really exciting thing to share and build community with. So I'm excited.
Yeah. I'll be putting the ticket link in the
Cool.
comments so you guys
Thank
can
you.
like grab that. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And like how can people work with you? You
Mm,
have like a really special offering that you do, and
thanks.
people would find you if they're in grief and in the
Yeah.
process. Tell us a little bit about like the work that you do with
Mhm.
clients and how someone might find support with working with you.
Yeah, so I communicate with souls who have passed on, and I also do intuitive coaching around spiritual work and intuition. So my sessions, you can find me on indigocorners.com under services. Intuitive mediumship is what I do. And so I see clients both over the phone, online, and in person, and we navigate this world of the unseen together. And so we both will kind of direct the session together depending on what your intentions are. And honestly, the great thing about these sessions is that spirit comes through and guides me, and I'm just channeling for the most part. So the messages that you're meant to receive from the beyond just are going to come through. I can't control or manipulate the information. It is what it is. And so the
Yeah.
great thing about it is I get to witness healing happening, in real time, where people are receiving messages that aren't coming from me, they're coming from the beyond. I mean, their stuff comes through that I couldn't possibly know from a personal place. It's coming from somewhere else. It's coming from spirit. And so I've seen this information really land with people in a way that is deeply empowering, creates so much relief and letting go of resistance, and allows folks that have been suffering a long time with different issues, whether it be the loss of somebody in the flesh, or whether it be a deep emotional block that they're trying to get through and they're just struggling with, and they need some information to gently remind them about where their power is so that they can get back on track. The messages come through and can deliver that harmonizing effect of getting people back in alignment with the truth. So it comes in different forms, but they've been very, very powerful, and I am honored and grateful to do them and to partner with the spirits that come through, because spirits of the deceased will come through and tap me on the shoulder and want to speak. And how magical is that? And it's always from love. And I really want to make that point. It is always from
Yeah.
love and forgiveness. It's always in totality and harmony and unity. The messages never come through in painful, fearful, it's just not the point. The other side is unity consciousness. It's in love. And so another thing I want to point out real quickly is that a lot of times, which is really interesting, is that the spirits that have crossed over, they've already gone through a life review, they've already done their own inner work, and they just want to help us heal now. And so they have a karmic instruction and gift to those of us that are still living. And when we tap into this, we can actually heal our karmic lineage. I mean, it's a really powerful thing. So it's the beyond.
I
It
love it.
feels beyond.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you for
I
having me.
like absolutely. I'm so grateful to have you on and just like highlight what you do. Because I like we were discussing, I think there's a lot of like fear around it, and you
Yeah.
just bring so much love to it, and gently guide people through what might seem scary and overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so I'm just so grateful to know you and know the work that you do. And I'll drop the links down in the comments below. Like,
Thank you.
definitely check out Steph. I hope you guys come to her workshop, and I'll be there, and we'll all be like working on this together. I'm super excited. So thank you so much for your time. And
Thanks, Megan.
yeah,
I adore
absolutely. It's been
you.
such a pleasure.
I really do. It's so
I
great.
adore you.
Cool. Oh, thanks
All
everybody
right.
for checking in.
Bye, guys.
Bye.